Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Below the Line, the official podcast of the PSA Master Executive Council, produced by your Communications Committee. We have a lot of ground to cover today as we highlight the Contract Enforcement Committee, headed up by Committee Chairman Captain Connor Barnes, as we discuss his committee's role in helping to protect your contractual rights as a PSA pilot. As always, we welcome your feedback and content suggestions via email at psacommunications@alpa.org. Make sure to subscribe to the channel wherever you get your podcast to be one of the first to listen to future episodes and important information from your MEC leadership. Captain Josh Osborne will be your host for today and will help to guide the discussion as we move through a broad range of information, tips, and tricks to help you as you fly the line and navigate various contractual provisions. Let's join Josh and Connor in the studio as we go Below the Line.
Well, hello again, everyone. As Tom said, my name is Captain Josh Osborne. I'm the Vice Chair for Communications for PSA's MEC, and I'll be hosting today's episode of Below the Line. Joining us today is Captain Connor Barnes. He's the Chairman of the Contract Enforcement Committee. Connor, welcome to Below the Line.
Thanks for having me.
So for those that don't know you and haven't had the pleasure of flying with you or meeting you, kind of give us your brief background and your areas of responsibility within contract enforcement.
It started back in 2021, came on as an FO, was a first officer for a little over 2 years. Chose to do the high time FO 750 when we didn't have the hold a line requirement, so I was able to kind of push off upgrade a little bit there. Been a captain, guess coming up on 3 years now, line check airman for almost a year and a half as well. So thoroughly enjoyed that. As for the union side, joined the Contract Enforcement Committee right after probation, and then shortly after that, the chairman and vice chair decided to flow to American outside the flow, asked if I wanted the position, and I took it.
So contract enforcement is a pretty broad topic. Can you tell us what the role of the Contract Enforcement Committee is within the PSA MEC?
Really kind of have two parts. We have access to almost all the darts that go on within the pilot group. So we're able to oversee those, answer just about all of them that we can and that we have the answers to. Obviously, the scheduling ones that require a little bit more in-depth detail, we leave to the scheduling guys that have all of the access. And then kind of the second part is we deal with all the grievances that the pilots file that think there was a contract violation by the company, and everything, I guess, revolving around the contract and anything that's going into it.
So let's say that a violation has occurred and it reaches you all within contract enforcement. How do you all go about interacting with the company whenever an issue arises?
We usually interact with them very well, very cordial between Alpa and the company on these issues. We each have our arguments of why we think it goes one way or the other. We present those at GRC, and both sides do a very good job of listening to hear what goes on from our side, as well as we're listening to their side of it. And on many occasions, the company is willing to be a little more lenient or a little bit more on the pilot side when all the facts are laid out to make the pilot whole.
So your committee's job is more or less to be an advocate for the pilot on their behalf within a meeting with the company to basically tell their side of the story and try to get a positive outcome for any type of situation that they've had.
Yeah, we've got a team of a couple people there that go to GRC to be able to speak on the pilot's behalf that all have a good working knowledge of the contract and the ins and outs of it.
So during your time being the chairman, you've obviously worked through numerous cases. In your opinion, what's the most important sections of the contract that you think all pilots should really understand?
Definitely start with Section 3, which is compensation. It's how you're paid. Everybody wants to know how you're paid. That's where, 50% of our problems come from is people think that they're paid wrong, when in reality, they were paid right. It's just kind of a confusing section. And then the the other section would be section 25 for scheduling and obviously all their associated LOAs that go along with these. Those are kind of the two that I would focus on the most. And then, I mean, as a back burner, section 19 on the grievances and kind of the timelines with them then of being able to file the grievance and, how long you're able to wait or not wait and when it needs to be filed for your grievance to be resolved.
So, aside from sections 3 and 25 of the contract, do you see anything else that causes more confusion or maybe some common misconceptions that pilots may have?
Yeah, I mean, the whole contract has gray areas all around it. Um, it's mostly kind of where the pilots get confused. Everybody can kind of read the black and white and go from there and interpret it to the best of their knowledge. But many of the gray areas have been discussed in GRC or with the company and just hasn't been published. We've been trying to get some documents in some different ways to get some of these gray areas resolved with the company and I guess get them distributed to the pilots, whether through MOUs, LOAs, or just overall understanding.
So, Connor, take just a minute, kind of walk us through the grievance process. Tell us a little bit about, how pilots file grievances and what that process looks like for them, basically from the beginning to the end.
So yeah, I mean, first and foremost, a violation has to occur. That's the biggest thing is some point of the contract or somewhere in the contract has to be violated. If it just gets turned out that you didn't like what happens, that's not a violation. We can't file a grievance as well as it has to be in the contract. There's a lot of company procedures or companies, things that they do that were never negotiated by ALPA, and therefore we cannot file a grievance on it. That's just what the company's doing. But after that, the pilot would need to file a grievance through dts.alpa.org, also known as a PRF, which is a pilot resolution form. Include all their evidence to support their case, and then this has to be done within 30 days of the violation. The contract team will investigate the grievance to make sure there is a violation and that we have enough supporting evidence for our case to be able to take it to the company and fight it. After that, it's sent to the chief pilot's office. They have 10 days to respond. Three outcomes of it. It can be upheld, which you get what you want. It can be denied. They don't agree with it. Or sometimes everybody gets busy and there's just no response from them. And that if we don't like the answer that we get from them or if they don't respond, then we take it to GRC, which is the Grievance Review Committee. We'll compose it into a formal grievance, send it to the company at that time, and then they have 7 days from when we sent it to, I guess, basically prepare for the GRC meeting. We meet every month to discuss the current grievances and try to come to a resolution on them. Some are able to be held over for the next month to find more information, get more information from different teams. After that, if we still can't come to an agreement with the company, then we get what's called deadlocked, and it gets sent to arbitration. At this stage, it's a little bit more lengthy, just because there's a lot of moving parts. But the lawyers from from ALPA and from the company will basically take it to court and discuss it there, and it'll get decided by an arbiter, and they make the decision for us based on the contract and how the language reads and everything.
So that's a pretty in-depth process. There's quite a few steps involved in that. So let's just as a general question, let's just take a general case, your general contract violation case. At the end of the GRC process, assuming that it doesn't go to an arbitration and you all are able to decide it within GRC, how long is that process usually?
It really depends on when the pilot files the PRF. If they're able to file it and, the next day I'm able to send it off to the company and then it's, 10 days and then we're going right into GRC, maybe a month. Or it can be as much as, a month and a half or, maybe even 2 months, depending on where it is in that process. If it's not gonna make it into the next month's GRC, it might be put on the back burner just a little bit while we focus on the cases that are coming up and then be able to get it put into I guess into the chain to get resolved from there.
So, I'd like to talk for just a minute about kind of real world examples that you may have. Are you able to share with me kind of a recent case where something may have seemed like a violation on initial review, but as you dug into it a little bit, it actually wasn't?
Yeah, I mean, we get many cases where pilots think there's a violation about maybe an assignment that they're getting assigned from off of hot reserve or also off of short call or anything like that. Create a very long day or countless other things, long sits, short sits, when truthfully there is no violation by the company. They did everything the way that they were supposed to, and it's going to be a rough day and it's going to be a long day, but there was no actual violation anywhere in it.
So, let's talk a little bit about the common pitfalls that you all are seeing right now. Are there any mistakes that pilots are making right now when it comes to protecting their contractual rights?
Yeah, a lot of pilots will voluntarily and almost involuntarily waive their contractual rights by accepting assignments or operating flights that violate the contract. This is mostly seen like delays. The company's not sitting there, on their computer staring at your schedule all day long. Once you get the assignment, they're moving on to the next problem that has arose and trying to assign the next thing. They've got that entire operation to run. So if you think there's a violation and the pilot needs to reach out to either crew scheduling or the chief pilots and, say, hey, we're at the point now to where the contract has been violated and I need to be, reassigned, sent home, whatever we need to do to where you're not operating anymore.
So you mentioned a couple of cases where pilots may involuntarily be waiving sections of the contracts. Are there any situations where a pilot would unintentionally waive those protections?
We had one the other day where um, delayed all day. I can't remember the airport, but they were extended, and so they have to complete their round trip within 6 hours. Um, and so by the time the pilot called, it was within the 6 hours, and then the time came to where we got delayed past the 6 hours. All they had to do was basically call back into the chiefs and say, or crew scheduling and say, hey, I need a hotel. We've gone past my 6 hours of extension, and they would have gotten a hotel for him, and the pilot most likely would have been junior manned into the next day, and um, instead they operated the flight back, which by doing that you're unintentionally basically waiving your contractual right because that section's in there for a reason.
So this kind of brings up an interesting point. Whereas if a pilot waives their contractual rights and then maybe subsequently something happens, they don't make it back to base, and they subsequently want to file a PRF. This is just an example, but what's contract enforcement's stance on something like that if the pilot voluntarily waives their contractual rights?
Definitely. I mean, obviously file a PRF if the contract was violated, but it's kind of a case by case basis, and we have to go in and dive in and look at all of the facts that are going to be presented, and all of the information that we can get on the case. Um, and the situation we just talked about, the pilot contacted or reached out when it was still a legal assignment. Um, after it then became an illegal assignment, they never reached out. They never tried to, basically say, hey, this has gone past the point, um, to go from there. But like I said, I mean, it's a case by case basis. We look at all of them the same and have to really dive in and see what information is presented at the time.
So, in normal day to day line operations, what should a pilot do kind of in that moment if they think that their contract is being violated?
If they think it's being violated, they should contact crew scheduling immediately, see what they can do. If it's a scheduling issue, if it's something other than that, contact the chiefs, or if their scheduling's not playing ball with you, then the conference and the chiefs and go from there. If there's still a disagreement with that and what's going on, since we're not able to be there in the moment and everything, we normally say you should operate the flight back and then submit that grievance afterwards, and we can be able to kind of go fight it on the back end.
So, Connor, obviously within the MEC, there's a lot of different committees. How do you all coordinate with those different groups, such as scheduling, safety, hotel committee? How are you all kind of able to crosstalk and interact with each other?
We work very closely with scheduling mostly just because many pilots never include important documentation like their schedule or the trips or anything like that into their grievances. And so we're able to go through the scheduling team to be able to get those, as well as they can pull back when things were assigned and kind of the chain of events that's going on in that day. Um, we as the contract team don't have access to all of the information and the master flicka and everything else going into the scheduling side there. We also work and talk with a lot of other committees trying to make sure that they're aware of, different cases and different kind of grievances of how we're moving forward and if things are changing or if we've come to a new agreement on something that might change how things are done moving forward.
So, Connor, with PSA being an ALPA carrier, uh, we obviously have quite a few resources that we can pull from. From an ALPA national standpoint, what role do they play for you in contract enforcement?
They play a huge role in all of this. They're always they're always got our back. So when we try to deal with we obviously try to deal with the dispute in-house first before getting, you know, everybody else and their teams involved in everything beyond that. But if we can't come to agreement like we talked about and deadlocked our arbitrators, they'll be able to kind of devise a team and get that for the best possible outcome for the pilot. Even if we have a disagreement within, like the contract enforcement team of how the contract reads, we can go to national and kind of put it in front of them and be like, what do you guys think about this? How would you kind of interpret it and go from there as well?
So, kind of shifting back to the pilots here, how important is the actual pilot's participation in making contract enforcement effective?
The more pilots that have grievances and that are filed and we basically are bringing it to the company's attention that this is going on, the better. Because if it's happening to multiple people and, it's not getting any better, the more grievances we file, the more it gets put in front of their face. It can create and change rather than just one pilot filing something and it's like, oh, well, it just happened on this day because some reason.
So, you kind of alluded just a little bit to where I was actually going to go next, and that's kind of the type of systemic issues that you all are seeing over and over. So, let's talk a little bit about those trends. Are you all seeing anything different between certain bases or maybe certain types of operations? Uh, is anything sticking out to you? Are you having more issues in one area than the other?
I don't know so much if we see different bases with problems, but more of when the company gets short-staffed. I know that we got all the pilots that we need, but um, when they get short-staffed or really thin on reserves, they're trying to keep the operation going, trying to do the best they can to reduce and minimize delays and keep everything running smoothly. That requires a lot of different moving pieces, reassignments, and every time there's a reassignment, it's another factor for another grievance or something like that. So definitely more on the. I don't know if any bases or fleets would be you know an answer, but definitely kind of some of the operation.
So, from your committee standpoint, how are you all addressing those systemic problems that you're seeing over and over versus kind of the one off random situations?
I mean, it's back to pilot participation. We can see what we can see on the enforcement side, but if we don't have any of the documentation to be able to take it to the company and put it in front of them and say, look, this is happening multiple times, um, then it's really hard to get things done. So if we have enough pilots with the same problem, we can create and come up with the best LOA or at least an MOU as well to describe kind of how things are being done and why they're being done that way. Obviously, those do take a lot of time because they're getting negotiated between the company and ALPA and agreed upon by both parties.
All right, let's shift gears here just a little bit and talk about kind of being proactive versus reactive. I know there's a lot of things that contract enforcement deals with where you all really are on the reactive side of it, more dealing with the issue after the fact. Is there anything that you all are doing or any type of work that you all are putting in behind the scenes to prevent these issues from even happening in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we do. I mean, like you said, we do both reactive and proactive, but I don't know. If it's brought to our attention, we're able to react to those issues and kind of take them and work with the company to find the best resolution. But and then if there's also common trends, then we're doing what we can to prevent this happening to multiple people over and over and over. And kind of, I would say in that case, more preventing them from happening in the future.
So, Connor, this is going to be kind of a wild stance here, but ultimately, I believe that your goal would be to not have any type of contract violations, which ironically would kind of put you out of a job. But how would you personally measure success in terms of actual contract enforcement for the pilot group?
Like you said, if my phone quit ringing and I quit getting grievances, that'd be the best, success contract enforcement can ever do because there's no more violations. But obviously this is the real world and that's not possible. So if we're able to win all those grievances and really, I guess, make the pilot whole, bring him back to where he would have been before having to do all this extra work and, even maybe getting a little bit more than what the pilot wants, or even preventing it from happening in the future, we consider those wins and definitely a positive for us.
I think it kind of goes without saying, but your group takes not just the black and white, but you all kind of have to read between the lines here and there. And that's really where your group seems to excel. So, kind of shifting back to the pilots and their engagement with your committee, how can the pilots best document and report any potential violation that they're looking to submit to you?
I always say screenshots are, to win and lose. When something happens, being able to screenshot it on your phone and, don't crop it or anything, have that timestamp of when it's being done and what's going on, because that really does help, you know, put the case into what it is, because you have the time that it was done and everything to where that time could be different than what scheduling's time is showing or something. Um, so when it comes down to it in the grievance process, it's all about what we can prove and what we can, show that what actually happened. So the more information, the more evidence on a violation you have, the better case we have moving forward, whether that's your schedule, your trip, all of these things before, trips before they were altered, so on and so forth. But reporting that potential violation, as I said in the beginning, filing that PRF at dts.alpa.org. And if you're not sure if it's a grievance or not, um, you can file a DART and we'll answer it there in a more timely manner, most likely, and be able to get you an answer and say whether or not you should file that grievance and go down that road or not.
So we talked a little bit about the information that you all are looking for. I know you had mentioned that you said that you wanted pilots to take screenshots, make sure that those screenshots weren't cropped and that you were getting the full picture. Is there any other type of information or maybe a certain format type that works best for you all as you're working through a case investigation?
Being able to get the whole thing. So if you're sending in a schedule, don't screenshot it. If it's on Flicka, send us the entire PDF document of your whole schedule. Same with PBS, send us the entire PDF. The biggest one we get is people are screenshotting ELP right now, and you send in four different screenshots for, your entire different ELP, and now we're sitting here trying to piece together four different pictures, and it just takes a lot more time and effort to be able to do it that way. When you just download the PDF and send us that, we can have an answer super quick, especially if we're in GRC and we're trying to fight on the pilot's behalf. Um, we can be able to pull that up and it's a lot easier to read. Everybody knows how to do it. Another big one is any prior communication with the company. So if you've reached out to Crew Pay, if you've reached out to the chief pilots, what are their answers and what's going on, there with kind of what they said. Did they deny a PED because they requested more information, or did they deny a PED because they don't think it's an emergency? That's two different denials. If they just want more information, just send them more information and hopefully it'll be approved.
So, Connor, what would you say to a pilot if they were sitting, let's say that you were sitting in the airport talking with them and they had a potential contract violation that they were discussing with you, but they seemed a little hesitant or apprehensive to actually file the PRF? What would you tell them?
File a DART first. Say what happened in the DART. And like I said, we've got a lot more members that have DART access and able to go through there and answer the questions than we do with the PRF site. So if you're unsure, you can file that, or if you want, you can just go straight into filing a grievance, and we can go from there and figure out whether it is a grievance or not.
So, coming in with some closing thoughts here, if there was one thing that you wish every pilot at PSA understood about contract enforcement or the contract enforcement committee, what would it be?
Every member on the committee is a volunteer. Nobody's sitting here getting paid for it per se. We work normal pilot schedules just like anybody else that's on the line. So we may not be able to answer your question right away or be able to get back to you the same day or within a couple hours. We're flying, or maybe we're just flat out enjoying our day off, but we're doing what we can to be able to, get the answers and everything for you.
So, one final question here. Is there any final advice that you would have for a pilot who is trying to protect their rights while flying the line?
Know your contract as well as you know your aircraft. Always keep good personal records of schedules, assignments, any irregularities. If something doesn't seem right, address it professionally in the moment when possible, but don't hesitate to involve your union or professional standards when needed. Also protect yourself with good fatigue management, and don't let external pressure push you into an unsafe or non-compliant decision, because at the end of the day, your certificate is yours alone. Treat it that way.
Well, that's fantastic advice, Connor. Thank you very much for joining us today. We certainly do appreciate all of your insights. And for those of you that needed those links again that were mentioned previously, the link to the DART system is dart.alpa.org. And then to file a PRF, that would be at dts.alpa.org. You can also find these links within your ALPA app as well as on the PSA MEC website. Captain Barnes, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And a big thank you to each of you for tuning into this episode of Below the Line. We certainly do appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join us and gather some useful information that you can use in the future. Join us next time as we continue to explore the various committees that help represent you and further your interest as a PSA pilot. Until next time, fly safe, stay safe, and we'll see you below the line.
This has been a publication of the PSA Master Executive Council, and we thank you for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to the channel wherever you get your podcasts to make sure you never miss a new episode filled with important information. If you have ideas about what we should cover on a future episode, be sure to email us at psacommunications@alpa.org. On behalf of your MEC leadership and the countless volunteers working behind the scenes, thank you for everything you do on a daily basis. We look forward to bringing you the next episode covering important topics as we continue to go below the line.